Captain Leela Ormsby had been stranded on the frozen planet of Seleth for what felt like an eternity. Her mission had failed, and her small craft had crashed into the icy landscape, leaving her to fight for survival. With no way to communicate with Earth and only limited supplies, she had built a small shelter to protect herself from the constant freezing temperatures. Seleth was a planet of harsh winters, its endless frozen plains stretching as far as the eye could see. No plants, no animals, just endless snow and ice. But Leela had learned to adapt. Each day was a struggle, but she had survived. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. She was alone. The loneliness was the hardest part. One cold morning, as Leela was making her way back to her shelter after gathering some fuel, something unusual caught her eye in the distance. It looked like a streak of smoke, but it wasn't coming from the ground. It was coming from the sky. At first, she thought it was just the wind playing tricks on her, but then the sight grew clearer. It was a ship, descending toward the surface. The large metallic object with no markings, spiraling out of control. Leela's heart raced as she watched the ship crash into the icy plains below. She immediately dropped everything and ran toward the wreckage. Her curiosity pushed her forward, but she also knew that whatever had crashed might be a sign of life, something she hadn't seen in months. It was a chance, perhaps the only chance. She'd had to find someone else on this barren world. As she approached the crash site, the twisted remains of the ship lay scattered across the ice. It had clearly been damaged during its descent, and pieces of the hull were strewn across the ground. Lila's eyes quickly scanned the wreckage, looking for signs of survivors. The air was thick with the scent of burning metal, and the wreckage gave off an eerie, unnatural glow. Layla moved carefully, stepping over the twisted remains of what used to be a spacecraft. She saw no signs of life. No movement, no voices, only the wind whistling through the wreckage. Her heart sank. She feared she might be too late. Then, as she moved around the debris, she saw it, a faint light in the distance, barely visible through the smoke. At first, Leela thought it was a trick of the light, but as she got closer, she realized it was something, or someone, alive. A figure, unlike anything she had ever seen, was lying motionless against a large piece of the wreckage. It was pale and translucent, its skin glowing with a soft blue light, like a lantern in the dark. It was humanoid in shape, but its features were unlike anything she had ever encountered. The creature appeared to be unconscious, its body cold to the touch, frozen by the harsh cold of Seleth. Leela knelt down beside the alien, her breath visible in the cold air. Her mind raced as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. It was an alien, a real alien. She had read about beings from other worlds, heard stories from explorers who had encountered strange creatures, but this was the first time she had seen one up close. She didn't know if it was a friend or an enemy, but one thing was clear: this creature needed help. Leela didn't hesitate. She placed her hand on the alien's cold shoulder and gently shook it. "Hey," she said softly, her voice full of concern. "Can you hear me? Are you alive?" The alien's eyes flickered open for a moment, revealing bright, glowing pupils that seemed to shimmer like stars. It struggled to sit up, its body trembling from the cold. And then, with a barely audible voice, it spoke. The words were strange, foreign, but the tone was clear. "Please, warm me," it whispered. Layla's heart skipped a beat. She didn't understand the alien's language, but the desperation in its voice was undeniable. Without thinking, she acted quickly. She knew she had limited supplies, but she had enough to keep the alien alive. She carefully helped the creature to its feet and guided it toward her shelter. As they moved through the snow, Leela couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. She had just found an alien, a being from another world, and now it was depending on her for survival. She didn't know who or what the alien was, but she was determined to help. She couldn't ignore the connection she felt, as if something important had just begun. The shelter was only a short walk away, but the cold made the journey feel endless. When they finally reached the warmth of her small base, Layla wasted no time in getting the alien inside. She quickly found her spare blankets and wrapped the creature in them, hoping to provide some comfort. The alien collapsed onto the floor, shivering uncontrollably. Layla used the small heater she had to warm the air around them, but she knew that the creature needed more than just heat. It needed care, tenderness, attention, and most of all, hope. As she sat beside the alien, watching it struggle to regain its strength, Layla couldn't help but wonder, who was this being? Where did it come from? And why had it ended up on Exiled, just like her? For now, all she could do was wait, and hope that this unexpected encounter would lead to something greater than either of them could have imagined. Layla sat on the cold floor of her shelter, her breath rising in white puffs as the warmth from the small heater gently filled the room. The alien creature lay on a pile of blankets, its pale, glowing body now starting to regain some color. It was still trembling, but the worst of the cold shock seemed to be passing. Layla watched carefully, her thoughts racing. She had never imagined she would find herself in this situation, sheltering an alien, a being from another world, in the middle of a frozen wasteland. The creature's fragile form seemed so vulnerable, and Layla felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. She couldn't leave it alone. She had to know more about it, who it was, where it had come from, and how it had ended up on Exiled. She had no way of contacting Earth, no means of getting help, so it was up to her to figure out what to do next. But one thing was clear. She couldn't just let this alien slip away into the cold. As the alien's body temperature slowly normalized, it began to stir. Its large, glowing eyes opened again, and it gazed at Layla with a quiet, almost hesitant expression. The air in the shelter was warmer now, and Layla could tell the alien was starting to feel better, though it still appeared weak. Layla spoke softly, careful not to startle it. "You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you. My name is Layla. What's yours?" The alien's eyes shimmered as if it were searching for the right words. After a long pause, it spoke, its voice barely a whisper. "Kelak. My name is Kelak." Layla smiled gently, trying to reassure Kelak. "Kelak, ha. That's a strong name." She paused for a moment, considering what to say next. "Where did you come from? What happened?" Kelak's eyes grew distant, as if lost in thought. It seemed as though it was struggling to find the right way to explain. Slowly, it began to speak, its voice still weak but more steady than before. "We, the Ellerin, are not from here. We are travelers from a distant star. We sought peace, knowledge, a future without war. But my people, the Ellerin Empire, did not agree with our vision. They cast us out, exiled us. I was one of the many who refused to follow their path." Layla listened carefully, her heart heavy with sympathy. She could hear the pain in Kelak's voice. It wasn't just the cold that had hurt the alien. It was the rejection from its own kind. She could imagine how that must have felt, to be cast out for believing in something different. "You're the only one?" Layla asked gently, her mind trying to process what Kelak had just shared. "No," Kelak replied softly. "There are others like me, scattered across the stars, hiding from the Empire. We were once a great people, full of knowledge and wisdom. But now we are nothing more than outcasts." Layla felt a deep sense of understanding. She knew what it was like to be alone, to feel like an outsider. She had always been a loner, even before her crash on Exiled, and now, in a strange way, she could relate to Kelak's loneliness. But she also knew she couldn't just leave Kelak to face the world alone. She had a choice to make. Kelak's glowing eyes met Layla's, and there was a moment of silence. It was as if the alien was waiting for something. An answer, a promise, something to hold on to. Finally, Kelak spoke again, its voice stronger this time, though still filled with a sense of desperation. "I do not ask for much, only warmth, only safety. But I cannot stay here forever. The Empire will come for me. They will not stop until they find me." Leela knew that Kelak was right. The empire that had exiled him would not rest until they had hunted down every last one of their dissidents. And she was certain that they would be looking for Kelak, even if they didn't know where to start. Leela sat back, thinking. She had never imagined that she would be caught in the middle of an interstellar struggle. But now, with Kelak here, she couldn't just turn her back on him. She had to do something. What if we leave this place? Leela said, her voice steady as she looked at Kelak. What if we try to find other survivors? Other exiles like you? I don't know where we'd go, but we could at least try. We could help each other. Kelak stared at her, his eyes wide with surprise. You would help me? After everything that has happened to my people? Leela nodded. You're not alone anymore, Kelak. I don't care who you are or where you come from. If we're going to survive, we'll do it together. I don't know what the future holds, but we can face it, as long as we stick together. For a moment, Kelak said nothing, but then, slowly, it nodded, the faintest smile playing on its lips. I would be honored. Together, then. Leela felt a surge of relief, the weight of her decision finally lifting. She had made her choice. The journey ahead would be dangerous, uncertain, and full of challenges, but she knew she couldn't let Kelak face it alone. They were allies now, bound by a shared hope and the promise of survival. And so, with a simple agreement, an unexpected bond had formed. Two beings, one human and one alien, united by their desire to find peace and safety in a universe that had cast them both aside. The days that followed were full of challenges, but Leela and Kelak quickly found a rhythm. As Leela worked to gather more supplies, Kelak's strength slowly returned. The alien's glowing skin grew brighter, the faint tremors in its body subsiding. Though it had no physical wounds from the crash, it was clear that the emotional toll of being exiled had taken its toll on Kelak. For Leela, the change was both subtle and profound. She had never imagined she would find herself in the company of an alien, let alone help one survive on a frozen wasteland. The planet was still as harsh and unforgiving as it had been before Kelak's arrival. But now it felt different, less empty. Even though they were strangers from different worlds, they had forged an unexpected bond. They relied on each other in ways that Leela hadn't expected. Tell me more about your people, Leela asked one evening as she worked by the heater, preparing some food. She had been growing more curious about Kelak and its world, and Kelak had been more than willing to share its knowledge. Kelak paused, its luminous eyes staring out at the blizzard raging outside their small shelter. The wind howled in the distance, a constant reminder of the harsh world they had to navigate. We were once a proud race, Kelak began, its voice soft, but filled with a quiet sadness. The LRN were known across the galaxy for our intelligence, our peacekeeping efforts, and our pursuit of knowledge. We had cities built into the sky, great libraries that stored the wisdom of the stars, and a society that thrived on learning and exploration. Leela listened intently, fascinated by the alien's words. The LRN had been so different from humanity in their pursuit of peace. Leela wondered how such a people could have been so easily cast aside. But the Empire, it grew corrupted, Kelak continued. The leaders of the LRN Empire believed that strength could only be achieved through war. They sought to conquer new planets, destroy those who opposed them, and expand their power. My people refused to follow that path. We sought peace, not domination. Sounds like they didn't take kindly to that, Leela said, her voice tinged with sympathy. No, Kelak said softly, its glowing eyes dimming. We were exiled, cast out from our own home. The Empire feared us, feared our ideals. They believed that if we were allowed to continue, we would inspire others to defy them. So, they hunted us down and forced us to flee. Leela's heart ached for Kelak. She could hear the pain in its voice, the sense of loss and betrayal. She had known loneliness before, but this was something entirely different. A people rejected by their own kind for seeking peace. "You're not alone anymore," Leela said, her words firm. "I'm with you. And if you want, I'll help you find others like you." Kelek's eyes lifted, meeting Layla's gaze. There was a flicker of hope in its eyes. "You would do that?" Leela nodded. "Of course. You're not the only one who's had to fight for what's right. If there are others like you out there, we'll find them." Kelek was silent for a long moment, as if considering her words. Then it nodded slowly. "Thank you, Layla. You do not understand how much this means." Leela smiled and returned to her task, preparing a small meal for the two of them. The food was simple, just a basic protein bar and some water, but it was enough to keep them going. There was no room for waste on Seleth, and every resource they had was precious. The next morning, Leela and Kelek ventured out into the icy world. Leela had grown more accustomed to the cold, though it still took a toll on her body. The harsh winds made the landscape seem endless, stretching on for miles with no sign of life. But Kelek seemed to have a natural sense of direction, guiding them through the frozen wilderness. "What's out here, Kelek?" "I've never seen another soul," Leela asked as they walked side by side. Kelek glanced at her, its eyes filled with both curiosity and sorrow. "There are others, I'm sure of it. The Ilaran do not hunt only one. They fear our knowledge, our resistance to their ways. There must be others hiding in the shadows, scattered across the galaxy, waiting for the day when they can rise again." Leela nodded, her heart filled with determination. She had always felt like an outsider, a lone explorer in the vastness of space. But now, for the first time, she felt like she was part of something larger, a fight for peace, for freedom, for survival. As they continued on, Lila's mind raced. They were not just two strangers trying to survive on a frozen planet anymore. They had a purpose. They were part of a story much bigger than themselves. "I'll help you find them, Kelek," Leela said, her voice strong. "We'll build something together, a place where you and your people can finally be free." Kelek looked at her, its glowing eyes full of gratitude. For the first time since its exile, the alien seemed to find hope again. Layla had given it something that no amount of technology or strength could provide: companionship, trust, and the belief that it wasn't alone. They were both strangers in the cold, but together, they could make a difference. And so, with each passing day, they grew closer, not just as survivors, but as allies in a fight for something greater. The cold winds of Sileth could never freeze the warmth that was beginning to grow between them, and they both knew that their journey had only just begun. Days turned into weeks as Leela and Kelek continued their journey through the icy wilderness of Sileth. Every morning, the winds howled across the vast frozen plains, and every night, the stars shone cold and distant above them. Yet, despite the harsh conditions, the two of them pressed on. Their goal remained clear: find others like Kelek, other exiles who had been cast away by the Eleran Empire, and offer them a chance at freedom. As they traveled, Leela noticed the small changes in Kelek. Its skin glowed with a stronger, more vibrant light, and its movements were less stiff. Though still haunted by the memories of its exile, Kelek was slowly healing. The companionship they shared was doing more than just helping them survive. It was helping Kelek regain its strength. One evening, as the two of them sat by a campfire, Layla looked out at the vast horizon, her mind drifting back to Earth. She missed her home, the warmth of the sun, the sound of the ocean, the hum of a busy city. But those memories seemed far away now, like a different life, a life she would never return to. She had no idea how long it would take to find other survivors, or even if they would ever succeed. But in that moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Kelek, sensing her quiet reflection, spoke softly. "Leela, I have been thinking about what you said, about finding my people. I have a plan, but it is dangerous. There is a place, hidden in the deepest part of Sileth, a place where I believe other exiles may be gathering." Leela turned to Kelek, intrigued. "What kind of place?" A stronghold, Kalak explained. It is an ancient Illiren facility, built long before the Empire became what it is now. My people used it as a refuge, a place of learning and safety. But after the exile, the Illiren Empire sealed it off, hoping that no one would ever find it again. Leela's eyes widened. You think we can find it? Kalak nodded. I know we can. I have studied the old star maps, and I believe the location is hidden beneath the ice. But it will not be easy. The place is buried deep, and the journey to reach it will take us into the most dangerous parts of the planet. Leela stared into the fire, considering Kalak's words. The idea of finding a hidden stronghold full of exiles sounded like a dream. It would be a place where they could regroup, learn, and maybe even build something new. But Kalak was right. It wouldn't be easy. The path would be treacherous, and they had no way of knowing what dangers might be waiting for them along the way. Still, Leela knew there was no turning back now. She had committed to this journey, and she had committed to Kalak. Together, they would find a way. We'll do it, Leela said, her voice steady. I'll help you get there, Kalak, whatever it takes. Kalak's eyes softened with gratitude. Thank you, Leda. You do not understand how much this means to me. To us. The next day, they began their journey toward the hidden stronghold. The landscape around them grew more desolate as they ventured further into the frozen wasteland. The winds were fierce, cutting through their clothing and making it harder to breathe. The snow seemed to stretch endlessly, without a single landmark to guide them. But Kalak remained confident, using the old star maps to lead them. Every night, they huddled together by the fire, sharing stories of their past and discussing their plans for the future. Lila learned more about Kalak's people. The Illiren had once been a proud race, full of hope and knowledge. Now, they were scattered, living in hiding, trying to survive on distant planets, far from the Empire's reach. One evening, as they were resting beside their campfire, Leela couldn't help but ask, "Do you ever regret leaving? I mean, I know your people were exiled, but do you miss your home?" Kalak gazed into the flames for a long time before answering. "I miss what we once had. The knowledge, the beauty, the peace we sought. But I do not regret leaving. The Empire is not a place for those who seek truth. I am not alone in this exile. And as long as there are others like me, there is still hope." Leela nodded, understanding the depth of Kalak's words. She didn't have the luxury of knowing what it was like to be part of an advanced, peaceful society like the Illiren, but she understood the pain of losing a home, of fighting for something greater than yourself. The journey continued, the harshness of the world around them unrelenting. But with each step, Leela felt stronger, more determined. She wasn't just walking for survival anymore. She was walking for a future, for Kalak's people, and for the chance to rebuild what had been broken. Days turned into weeks, and the cold began to feel more like an old friend. They had learned how to navigate the blizzards, how to find shelter in the most unlikely places. Their bond grew stronger with each challenge they faced. They were no longer just two survivors. They were a team, united by a shared purpose. As the horizon began to shift, and the shape of a large, dark mountain appeared in the distance, Leela knew they were getting closer. The stronghold was within reach, and the next chapter of their journey was about to begin. And despite the overwhelming odds, despite the endless cold, Leela couldn't help but feel that they were on the verge of something extraordinary. Together, they would change the fate of Kalak's people, and perhaps their own. The journey had been long and grueling, but Leela and Kalak were closer than ever to their goal. As they trekked through the frozen landscape of Selaf, the mountain range loomed before them, dark, jagged peaks covered in ice and snow. Kalak had been right. This was the place. The stronghold was hidden somewhere in the heart of the mountains, buried beneath layers of ice, waiting to be uncovered. Leela's breath formed mist in the air as she trudged through the thick snow. Her body ached from the cold, but she kept moving. Kalak was walking ahead of her, its glowing skin lighting up the path. The alien's presence, once fragile and weak, had become a steady beacon in the harsh environment. With each step, Kelek's strength grew, and Leela found herself drawing courage from its quiet determination. The wind whipped around them, biting at their exposed skin. The cold seemed to seep into their bones, but they pressed on, driven by the promise of a new beginning. The stronghold represented more than just a shelter. It was a symbol of hope. For Kelek, it was a chance to find others like it, other exiles who had escaped the cruel rule of the Elleran Empire. For Leela, it was a chance to do something meaningful, to be part of something larger than herself. After hours of walking, the wind started to die down. The air felt still, almost unnatural. Lila's eyes scanned the snow-covered ground, looking for any sign of the hidden stronghold. Kelek stopped suddenly, its head tilting slightly, as if listening for something. Then, it pointed to a patch of snow-covered rock. "Here," Kelek said quietly. "This is the place." Leela's heart raced as she stepped closer. She could see nothing unusual about the area, just a plain stretch of rock and snow. But Kelek's glowing eyes were fixed on the ground, and Leela knew that the alien could sense something she couldn't. Kelek crouched down and placed its hands on the cold rock. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft hum, the ground began to shift. A hidden door, cleverly disguised beneath the ice and snow, slowly creaked open. Leela gasped in awe as the entrance to the stronghold revealed itself, a dark passage leading deep into the mountain. "This is it," Kelek whispered, its voice filled with both relief and reverence. Leela stepped forward, the excitement building in her chest. She had no idea what lay ahead, but she knew one thing for certain: they had found it. The door had opened, and a new chapter in their journey was about to begin. The two of them descended into the stronghold, the air growing colder as they moved deeper into the mountain. The walls of the tunnel were smooth, as if carved by an ancient hand. The path twisted and turned, leading them through narrow corridors and vast chambers. It was clear that this place had once been a thriving center of knowledge and culture. As they moved further into the depths, Kelek seemed to grow more animated, its glowing eyes scanning every surface with interest. "This place, it is older than I thought," it murmured. "I had heard stories, but to see it with my own eyes, it is beyond what I imagined." Leela felt a sense of awe herself. The stronghold was unlike anything she had ever seen. The walls were lined with strange symbols, faintly glowing with a soft blue light. There were ancient devices, technology that Leela could only guess at, sitting unused in the corners of the chambers. Some of the machines looked like they had been abandoned for centuries, while others appeared to be in pristine condition. "This was a center of learning, wasn't it?" Leela asked, her voice echoing softly in the cavernous space. Kelek nodded. "Yes, the Elleran once believed that knowledge should be shared freely, that the pursuit of truth could unite all beings. But that vision was lost when the Empire took control." Leela glanced around, taking in the silent beauty of the place. It was clear that this stronghold had been a sanctuary for those who believed in peace and knowledge, a place for those who had refused to follow the Empire's path. "Do you think others are here?" Leela asked, her voice filled with curiosity. "I hope so," Kelek replied. "But we must be cautious. The Empire's reach is long. Even in places like this, they may have left their mark." They continued deeper into the stronghold, the silence around them broken only by their footsteps. Eventually, they came to a large chamber, the size of a small city hall. In the center of the room stood an enormous stone table, covered in dust. On the walls, more symbols were etched into the stone, their meaning lost to time. Suddenly, Kelek stopped, its glowing eyes widening. "Look." Leela followed Kelek's gaze and saw something that made her heart skip a beat. Against one of the walls was a large mural, its colors faded but still visible. It depicted a group of alien figures, Elleran, Leela assumed, standing in a circle, their hands raised in unity. In the center of the circle was a figure unlike any Leela had seen before. It was a being with long, flowing hair and wings of light, a symbol of hope and freedom. "This," Kalak whispered, almost in reverence, "this is the symbol of the original exiles, the first to leave the Empire. This place, this stronghold, was meant to be a beacon, a place for those who refused to surrender." Leela's heart swelled with emotion. She had come here to help Kalak, to find other survivors. But now, standing in this ancient hall, she realized how much more this place represented. It wasn't just a safe haven. It was a symbol of defiance, a place where those who believed in peace could come together and rebuild. "We're not alone," Leela said quietly, her voice full of hope. Kalak turned to her, its eyes bright with gratitude. "No, Leela, we are not." Together, they stood in the center of the stronghold, knowing that this was only the beginning. Their journey had led them here, to a place where the dream of peace and unity could be reborn. And with that, the future seemed a little less uncertain. The stronghold was silent, its ancient walls whispering of a time long past. As Leela and Kalak explored deeper into the heart of the facility, the feeling of awe only grew. This place, hidden for centuries, had once been a beacon of knowledge, a sanctuary for those who sought peace. Now, it was their only hope. They moved carefully through the chambers, Kalak's glowing eyes scanning every surface. The walls were lined with more symbols, some familiar, some foreign. The technology scattered throughout the stronghold was both beautiful and strange. Machines that hummed with a quiet energy, devices whose purpose Kalak could only guess at. "I've never seen anything like this before," Leela said, her voice filled with wonder. "It's like stepping into a dream." Kalak nodded, its expression serious. "This place was built to preserve our knowledge, our history. If we can find the right records, we might learn more about how to fight back against the Empire." Leela's mind raced. She had always been curious about alien civilizations, but standing here, in this ancient stronghold, it was hard to process everything. The weight of the place, the sense of loss and hope intertwined, left her speechless. As they walked deeper into the stronghold, they came upon a large chamber. It was unlike any of the others. The walls were adorned with intricate carvings, and in the center of the room stood a pedestal, on which rested a large glowing crystal. The crystal pulsed with light, casting strange shadows across the room. Kalak's eyes widened. "This is it." Leela's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" "The heart of the stronghold," Kalak replied. "This crystal contains the knowledge of my people. It holds the records of everything, their history, their science, their dreams. It is the key to everything we need." Leela stepped closer, her hand instinctively reaching out toward the crystal. It was warm to the touch, as if alive, and the moment her fingers made contact, the room seemed to hum with energy. The crystal's light brightened, and for a brief moment, Leela felt as though she was being pulled into a different world, a world filled with the sounds and voices of an ancient civilization. In a flash, the vision faded, and Leela found herself back in the stronghold, her hand still resting on the crystal. Kalak was staring at her, its eyes filled with concern. "Are you all right?" it asked. Leela nodded, her heart racing. "Yeah, I don't know what just happened, but I saw something. It was like I was inside your history. I saw your people, your cities, your homes." Kalak seemed to relax slightly. "The crystal is a living record. It connects with those who touch it, showing them glimpses of the past. It is both a memory and a guide. It shows us what was, and perhaps what can be again." Leela stepped back, her mind spinning. "This is incredible. If we can understand what's in this crystal, we might be able to find the others. The people who left the Empire." Kalak was silent for a moment, its glowing eyes fixed on the crystal. "Yes, but we must be careful. The knowledge within it is powerful. Too much at once could overwhelm us." Leela thought about that for a moment. The crystal was a treasure, a beacon of hope, but it also carried the weight of an entire civilization's history. She wasn't sure they were ready for all of it. "I think we should start small," Leela said. "We can study the crystal, piece by piece. Learn about your people, their technology, their beliefs, and maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to bring them back together." Kelak nodded, its face softening with gratitude. "You are wise, Lila. It is good to have someone by my side who understands." For the next few hours, they sat together in the chamber, studying the crystal. Kelak carefully placed its hands on the smooth surface, and the light within the crystal responded, shifting and changing. As it did, holographic images began to appear in the air before them. Ancient Elaren cities, bustling with life. Ships that soared through the sky, carrying knowledge and peace to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. They saw families, communities, a civilization built on ideals of unity and progress. But then the images darkened. Lila watched as the peaceful cities were torn apart by storms of fire and war. The ships that once carried knowledge now carried destruction, and the families that had once thrived were scattered, their homes destroyed. "The Empire's corruption," Kelak murmured, its voice filled with sorrow. "The peace we sought was lost to greed, to power." Leela's heart ached for Kelak. It had lost everything, its home, its people, its way of life. And now, it was here, in the coldest, most desolate place in the galaxy, trying to rebuild. "But it's not over," Leela said, her voice firm. "Your people are out there, Kelak. They're still alive, and we're going to find them." Kelak turned to her, its eyes filled with hope. "You truly believe that?" Leela nodded. "I do. We've come this far, and we're not turning back now." The bond between them had grown even stronger in that moment. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about finding the courage to keep going, to keep fighting for something greater. Leela and Kelak were no longer just two strangers stranded on a frozen planet. They were a team, united by a shared purpose. Together, they would uncover the secrets of the crystal, find Kelak's people, and perhaps rebuild what had been lost. The stronghold was silent once again, the crystal's light still pulsing gently in the center of the great chamber. Leela and Kelak had spent hours studying the holographic images, learning about the history of the Elaren people, both their glory and their downfall. But now, as the light from the crystal dimmed, the reality of their mission set in. "We've seen so much," Leela said quietly, her voice filled with awe and concern. "There's so much to learn from this place, so much to do. But where do we even start?" Kelak stood beside her, its glowing eyes focused on the crystal's surface. The pain of its people's history was evident, but there was something else in its gaze. Determination, a flicker of hope that had never quite gone out. "We start with what we know," Kelak replied softly. "We know the Empire has scattered my people across the galaxy, exiled them to the farthest reaches. But we also know this. Many of them are still alive, and they are waiting for us." Leela looked up at Kelak, the weight of those words sinking in. They weren't just looking for lost survivors. They were looking for the very future of a species, a future that depended on them, on their courage and persistence. The gravity of their mission filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't known before. She was no longer just a stranger on an alien planet. She was part of something bigger. She was part of a chance to rebuild a lost civilization. "We can do this," Leela said firmly, her voice resolute. "We have the knowledge now. We have the map, the tools. We can reach out to the others. They won't be lost forever." Kelak's eyes softened, and for the first time since Leela had met it, the alien seemed truly at peace. "Yes, Leela. Together, we can do it." The two of them left the chamber, walking through the corridors of the stronghold with new purpose. They would have to find a way to reconnect with the scattered survivors of Kelak's people. The journey would be long, but the stronghold had given them something precious. A chance, a vision of a new future. As they emerged into the cold air outside, the frozen landscape of Silath stretched out before them, vast and empty. But now it seemed less lonely. The wind no longer howled as harshly, and the snow, though still relentless, no longer felt like a barrier. The stars above twinkled in the dark sky, a reminder that the universe was vast and full of possibility. Lila took a deep breath, feeling the crisp air fill her lungs. It was the same air she had breathed when she first arrived on Exiled, but now it felt different, lighter, full of hope. They made their way to the makeshift camp they had set up earlier. It was a simple place, surrounded by snow and ice, but to Lila, it was a symbol of their journey so far. It was here that they had begun their mission, and it was here that they would continue, moving forward, step by step. "What do we do now?" Lila asked as they sat down beside the campfire. The fire crackled, the warmth spreading through her. "We plan," Kalek replied, its voice steady. "We have the information we need. Now we must find a way to contact the survivors. There are others out there, exiles like me, scattered across the galaxy. We must reach them, tell them that hope is not lost." Lila nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. The task ahead of them was immense, but they were no longer facing it alone. Together, they had already achieved the impossible, and together, they would keep going. "There must be a way to send a signal," Lila said. "We have the technology here. I'm sure there's a way to reach them." Kalek considered this for a moment before nodding. "Yes, I believe we can use the old communications network. It was designed to send messages across the stars, to reach every corner of the galaxy. If we can access it, we can contact the others." Lila smiled, feeling a sense of excitement building inside her. "Let's do it. Let's reach out to them. Let's show them that they're not forgotten." And so, their next task was clear. They would use the ancient technology of the Stronghold to send a message to the exiles scattered across the galaxy. It would not be easy. It would take time, patience, and skill. But they had what they needed: each other, the knowledge from the crystal, and the drive to make it happen. As they sat by the fire that night, the stars shining brightly above, Lila couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The road ahead was uncertain, full of challenges they couldn't predict. But for the first time in a long while, she felt ready for it. Together, they would rebuild what had been lost. They would find the exiles, and together, they would forge a new future. The journey had only just begun.